Hello, distinguished guests, and welcome back to another episode of the Desert Tiger Podcast. And of course, here on the DTP, I am your host here on the show. My name is Colton G, and I am extremely ecstatic that you decided to join us today, as I am joined by my guest, Paul Wilson, the guitarist of the band SleepCircle. Of course, you guys know I'm going to give you a little bit of a deep dive on who they are before we get into my interview with Paul Wilson today. But before we get there, there's a few things I want to go ahead and take care of first. So first off, I want to go ahead and thank those of you who have checked out last week's episode featuring the Constellation sensation, Ryan O'Ryan. So, a little behind the scenes, I'm actually recording this the day that episode released, so usually I have some time to see the feedback of the episode, so I've only been able to see a little bit of initial feedback, but it all seems to be extremely positive. A lot of love for Ryan O'Ryan and his honesty and his openness on last week's episode as we dove into his world of being a professional wrestling manager, as well as his diving into the world of drag. So, of course, another thing I want to go ahead and do before we kick this off is just go ahead and inform you that this week's episode, including all of the other episodes in our backlog, including the Ryan O'Ryan episode, are brought to you by ilovedtp.com, because that's where you're going to go ahead and get decked out in all of the freshest Desert Tiger podcast swag gear, whatever you want to call it. That's where you're going to find it. You can rep it in front of your friends, your family, and even your enemies, because they are not going to be able to stop you from chasing your dreams and doing what you want to do. All right. SleepCircle is a Pacific Northwest infused rock band from Vancouver, British Columbia. Influenced by the music of the 1990s grunge and hard rock movements, their sound hits a familiar chord while staying unique through constant evolution. The initial idea of SleepCircle was formed by fellow music students and guitarists Paul Wilson and Kavian Iranzad in 2012, and would go through a few transformations before releasing their debut EP, Dead Weight, in 2017. Now, coming off the recent release of their debut full-length album, From the Heavens Through the Window, SleepCircle continues to show that falling asleep in a comfy rut is just something that they don't know how to do. The album's latest single, Bring It On, as well as the accompanying music video, focus on mental health, with the song itself focusing on entertainers who we have lost due to battles with personal demons, such as Amy Winehouse and Cornell, while the video focuses on the importance of reaching out to those friends who maybe aren't in the best situations, and maybe they don't want to send the messages out themselves. I know exactly how that feels, and I know that some of the listeners of the DTP probably have felt that way before too. Paul Wilson of SleepCircle joins the Desert Tiger podcast to discuss the band's shift in sound and vision, going into From the Heavens Through the Window from their EP Dead Weight, the album's singles and the messages behind them, what Bring It On actually means to Paul himself, and of course, in Desert Tiger fashion, we're going to deep dive into as much as we possibly can, so there's a lot more than that coming at you right away. But before we jump into that, that we have to go and give one of those singles from the debut full-length album, that of course being From the Heavens Through the Window. And of course, you're going to be hearing more about this single later on the song. So of course, that we play it for you so that we can give you a better idea of this conversation, as well as a better idea of SleepCircle as a whole. Give you guys a little bit of an idea, an understanding of the group. Maybe a little bit of a vision. Maybe a apparition.
Desert Tiger Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Desert Tiger Podcast. Paul Wilson, guitarist of the band SleepCircle, who recently released their debut full-length album, From the Heavens Through the Window. Thank you for joining me here on the podcast today, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start things off. Where did SleepCircle begin? Were you guys in other bands beforehand? Was this your guys' first full band? Where is your experience levels, and how did you guys end up meeting and coming together?
Well, the drummer of SleepCircle is actually my brother, so I've known him for about 30 years. But he actually wasn't in the picture when we first formed this band. It was probably first formed by Kav and I, Kavian, the other guitar player, who goes by Kav most of the time. We actually met first day of university when everybody else went to orientation, and we kind of missed that memo.
So you guys just both ended up in the same boat and just ended up introducing yourselves to each other.
Yeah, that's right. It was getting to that point. Oh man, 15, 20 minutes has gone by. Nobody's here. Maybe I should go over there and talk to that other guy who's looking anxiously at his phone as well.
See if he knows more than I do.
Yeah, that's right. Turned out we neither of us really knew anything about what was going on. So, but then it kind of just, we found out that we both played guitar, and then we started jamming together, and then he was playing for a deathcore project that I got involved in for a bit. Yeah, we kind of started SleepCircle in 2012, what would become SleepCircle, with some other local musicians that we knew.
Okay, so you say what would become SleepCircle. So it took a little bit of time to actually form into what SleepCircle is now.
Yeah, so we had a different drummer, and then we met Ian, who's the bass player now, at school, and we were all taking some pretty hardcore music theory classes at that time. So we were kind of we weren't really interested in writing like music for people to listen to. It was more just like making crazy noises on our instruments.
Definitely more going the instrumental, no burned path ahead of you type route.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then we decided we needed a vocalist, so that's when we added Alex Bone, who was on our first EP.
Okay, had you already added your brother on the drums at that point, or did he come after Alex?
No, actually, he came a bit after Alex. Yeah.
Okay, so how did your brother end up coming into the fold then?
Well, he had moved to Vancouver for school as well. He was going to Cap College in North Vancouver, and then the other drummer, he kind of was, just wasn't as into the project anymore. You know how people move on from things, and so we were kind of like, well, you know what, Andrew, you're the only drummer we know right now. Welcome to the fold.
So you and your brother aren't originally from Vancouver then?
No, actually, we moved here from Penticton.
Oh, cool. Did he also go to Vancouver for music school as well, or did he go for something else?
No, he went for music school as well. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So he was in the jazz program at Kaplan University.
Okay. So it was once he finally joined that you guys actually started getting into the studio and putting track to tape?
Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of around the time as well where we decided we were going to kind of change our focus from kind of like a deathcore sort of death metal sound and we were going to start trying to transition to more of like a hard rock or alternative rock kind of sound. So that's what I'd really think our first EP, Dead Weight, would be, is us kind of making that transition. Because we had probably written a whole album's worth of songs with our first drummer, and it was just kind of like, he was not really into it anymore, and then we were getting a new drummer with a totally different style, and we were just like, you know what, let's let's just explore this new direction. We all kind of love this music as well. So, let's just kind of take it in a new direction.
Oh, without a doubt. There's always no reason as to why you shouldn't explore your musical tastes, correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I would suggest everybody out there do that. You don't pigeonhole yourself in one genre.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So it was at this point that you guys made the conscious effort to move away from the death metal side of things that you truly became SleepCircle then?
Yeah, I would say that's when the band, when we decided to become, more of alternative hard rock sort of band, that was when it changed, and the band kind of began to become what it is today.
Okay. So we spoke a little bit about your first EP, Dead Weight. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was our first real studio recording experience. We had all done recordings before, but it was always in that classic musician way of I got a buddy going to music technology school, or who's becoming an engineer, and he's got some studio time at the end of the month. Do you guys want to come in and record? And I mean, those opportunities are great learning experiences, but I don't know how many people come out of them with a really polished, high quality product that they're happy with. So we had done stuff like that, or paying a buddy that has a home studio to do stuff. But this was the first time we'd gone in with an actual, producer who we didn't know really, and trying to make music in a professional setting in a professional way.
Okay, so this is the actual first time that you guys made legitimate songs, you would say.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, interesting. So coming out of Dead Weight, that being your first attempt from going from a band that is much a disarray of sound at the beginning, like you first say, to a group that then decides to move from the death genre. And it's something that you can definitely see in your music, and it's definitely even just between Dead Weight and this recent full-length album that you released, From the Heavens Through the Window, that you can definitely see the difference between them. So where does the difference between those albums begin? Was that right away that you guys noticed that the sounds were already beginning to shift?
Yeah, we as we were kind of finishing up Dead Weight, and we were writing, we're always writing. We're just constantly writing. So as we were finishing up Dead Weight and we were kind of writing new songs, we really noticed then as well that they were kind of starting to change again. And I think we were just trying to, From the Heavens Through the Window, we were just trying to write more sort of anthemic music, right? And music, really emotive anthemic music that people can identify with.
Definitely. And from the instrumentation, it is a lot more connective, not to say that it wasn't before otherwise, but it seems to flow in a much more smoother fashion this way, and something that also with the lyrics, they seem a lot more focused and a lot more message driven on this album.
Yeah, so we did have a vocalist change between these two albums as well. So Alex, we parted ways with him because he was just not, being in a full-time band wasn't really something that he had time for in his life. So we found Curtis, and we made this From the Heavens Through the Window with him. And so that was a big change in our sound as well. It was definitely the change of vocalist, going from somebody who had a pretty, almost, I kind of think of a post-hardcore sort of raspy sound, to somebody that was had a more cultured sound.
Mm-hmm. He definitely fits much more into the grunge hard rock feel, even somewhat of a sludge metal almost in a way, but it's a very interesting sound. So what is Curtis's background?
So Curtis is another music school recruit. I actually met him in a choir. We both got a scholarship to sing in this choir at St. James Anglican Church in Vancouver. And one night during choir practice, we were goofing off, as choir boys do. And he was making jokes about being in a power metal band. And I was like, oh, it's funny you should say that. Like, would you actually want to be in a metal band? And so we kind of just started, chatting about it. And then, then eventually we brought him on board.
Okay, so is he the main writer with the lyrics on this one?
Yeah, so he's the main lyricist and writes a lot of the vocal lines.
Okay, fantastic. So let's jump into From the Heavens Through the Window. So, what was the difference once you guys actually got inside the studio? What was the energy like?
It was good. I mean, it was a group of 5 people who really wanted to kind of take things to the next level. So there was it was a very high energy time, and it was also quite intense, because we were just all trying to do our best and really make the most of our investment.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. You guys went in studio with Matt Roach. He's done work with quite a few different bands. What did he add to the album?
Matt had a lot of input into the album. It's always good, I think, in the creative process to have somebody, sort of a neutral party, right, who kind of can listen to the songs with fresh ears and kind of give you suggestions, because sometimes you're not aware of your own blind spots, right, when you're writing music or when you're being creative, and you're like, I've written the song and it's my baby and it's perfect the way it is, and then someone else is kind of like, well, maybe it would be a little better if you're a little different if you try somebody else. So I think it's always good to have that sort of other point of view to kind of check yourself and also just, try new things. Sometimes Matt would be like, hey, try this. And we'd try it. We'd think about it. We'd talk about it. Okay, we're not going to do that. Other times he'd be like, try this. And then we'd go with that on the album. So it was a very collaborative, we were very collaborative with him and always take his opinion under consideration.
All right. Definitely. It's always good to have that refined set of ears that can always think of a different way to add or accentuate something in a song that maybe you didn't consider, especially if this being your second full-time in-studio recording your own songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And, I would suggest any musicians out there that it's really really worthwhile to at least listen to other people's ideas about your song. And people, I should preface that with people that know what they're talking about, but, professionals in the music field, it's always good to hear what they think about your songs, even if you don't agree with them. And, no one says that you have to, but it's food for thought, and I definitely think it will help you grow creatively.
Oh, definitely. Even if it's something that you don't agree with, it is a different side of things, and it gives you an idea of, is this how you want to represent yourself? And it makes you think of it in that different light.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's jump into some of the singles on this album. The first one, entitled Pumpkinhead, it's definitely... You can tell that there's a political aspect to it, but you don't really dive right into it.
Yeah, would you like me to speak a bit more about that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when we were writing the song, I think it was probably right after the 2016 U.S. presidential election. And it's just, it's just trying to tell people to, calm down a little bit, because these cycles, they come and they go, and this big orange pumpkin that's there now, he's going to be gone someday, and, people just kind of follow what they want to hear in the moment. And, we see trends in politics and in life, that reflect that all the time, where it's people not really thinking about what they're doing before they do it, and then reacting once they've realized their mistake.
Very much so. And something with the lyrics of the song as well is you kind of mention that once a new great pumpkin is put in its figurehead place, that it too will be hated for maybe not the same reasons, but it will definitely be hated and scorned for reasons nonetheless.
Yeah, exactly. And, in the end, and I think in the bridge section, it says, killing for the crown, right? In the end, all these sort of figureheads expect for us is to just sort of kill and die to prop them up and keep them in place.
Oh, exactly. As long as we continue fighting, then they are going to continue running and having power.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's speak a little bit more about the second song, the second single, Apparition. This song, I feel, definitely has it's very story-driven in the lyrics, and you can tell that it's getting over hardship, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this song is a really interesting song. I think it's different than anything else we ever wrote, and it was pretty spontaneous, and we kind of just jammed. It was a jam that became a song, which is kind of unusual for us, because usually we kind of develop songs in a bit more of a methodical, constructive way. So it was just kind of the spontaneous jam that became a song. And we live in Vancouver, and it's known for its natural beauty, and I think that song is really about just getting into nature, or sort of a natural or beautiful environment, and just kind of letting go of, like you say, your sorrow or your hardship, right?
Definitely. And sometimes putting yourself in a new environment can allow you to take that breath and feel renewed.
Yeah, take your mind off things, right? By doing something active, or the big lyric is took a walk by the river, and just kind of getting back to that sort of innocent, a more innocent state,
Yes, definitely returning to nature. So now that the listeners of the DTP know a little bit about the song that they heard off at the top of the show, I think it's time that we went ahead and gave that third single a spin before we go into talking a bit more about Bring It On and the music video that you guys did with it, the fact that you guys partnered with the Canadian Mental Health Association for the release of the album too. A lot of exciting things about that, and of course there's still some conversation about what is the future of Sleep Circle. All this and more with my guest Paul Wilson coming up very soon. But of course, we're going to take a little bit of a break here to first off let you guys know that this episode, as well as all the episodes of the DTP, are brought to you by ilovedtp.com. And why is that, Colton? Well, I'm glad that you asked. That is because I Love DTP is the best place where you can support the Desert Tiger podcast. It's because it's where you're going to go ahead and get yourself decked out in all sorts of sweet gear, swag, clothing, whatever you want to call it, so that you can rep the podcast wherever you go, in front of your friends, in front of your family, heck, in front of your enemies, because who cares about their opinion? I don't, and I know that you certainly don't either. So that's why we're just going to go around repping the DTP everywhere, letting people know just how cool it is and how much you love the show. And where do you go ahead and do that? That is over at ilovedtp.com. And of course, what does going and grabbing yourself some Desert Tiger podcast merch do? It assists me in going to places like music conferences, different cities and shows, so that I can get in-person interviews that I feel give us a lot more of a close connection. It allows us to do other things too, like upgrade our equipment. I would really love to upgrade the microphone that I am using at home, as well as upgrade the Rode rig, so that when I have 4-person interviews, that everybody could be heard a lot more clearly. And these are all things that are allowed to be done thanks to you, the listeners of the Desert Tiger podcast. And of course, I also want to go ahead and ask if you've followed the Desert Tiger Podcast playlist on Spotify. And of course, those being the Northern Lights playlist, which is our infectious grooves tune. Maybe you want to grab a few of those and get them stuck in your head before the end of summer. You know, some of those crucial summer driving tunes as you're cruising out to the lake house, to the cabin, to the beach those last few times. Maybe you guys are a little bit more into the Canadian rap and hip-hop side of things, and if that is the case, well, let me tell you that the Great Rhymed North is exactly what you are looking for. But maybe you like your music a little bit differently. Maybe you like your music with drums, guitars. Maybe you like to get heavy and head bang, just like Paul Wilson and the rest of the Sleep Circle boys used to do when they were kind of more into the death side of things. Well, maybe the Maple Moshers playlist, which is our Canadian heavy metal playlist, is exactly what you're looking for to take the edge off of your day. But maybe you're more into the punk, more into the hardcore side of things. Well, let me tell you that the Trans-Canada Skate Tape has got you covered front to back, East Coast to West Coast, as you are rolling on those four wheels in those decks and trucks, as I know that you guys love to do. Let's bring skateboarding back, you guys. Straight up, let's bring skateboarding back, yo! And last but not least, you're actually going to go ahead and find this upcoming song also on this playlist, and that, of course, is the Canuck Rock Potluck. It is a smorgasbord of different Canadian rock and roll from all, of course, the great nation of Canada. All those amazing radio rock tunes that you guys have stuck in your head all the day, plus all those incredible hidden gems from amazing bands who are on the rise from across Canada, just like Sleep Circle. And of course, you guys have already heard that the song coming up is Bring It On, and we're going to be diving into the details about this song very, very soon. So you know what I say? You know what I say? Bring it on!
the Desert Tiger Podcast.
Okay, so the third single on the album, and definitely a very powerful one that you guys actually teamed up with the Canadian Mental Health Association with on Bring It On. What does that song mean to you?
This song's really important to me. You know, I've struggled with mental health issues throughout my life, and I think, you know, many of us have experienced episodes of depression or anxiety for whatever reason, from, you know, events in our life, or just because the chemistry of our brain doesn't work properly. You know, we look at entertainers who we mention in that song, you know, like Lane Staley and Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse. And, you know, entertainers are supposed to be like, we look up to them and we idolize them, but I think sometimes we forget that they're people too, right? And that, you know, they have all these complex emotions just like we do. And I think the song's talking about how these people were idolized and loved by so many, yet, you know, they were in such dark places that they ended up taking their own lives, or, you know, if not by putting a gun to their head, by just killing themselves through drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the song's really talking about how, you know, those people as an example, but also talking about how if you start trying to change your mindset, right, and, you know, take steps to change the situation that you're in and embrace your challenges, that you can kind of, you know, see that dawn or see that sunrise and turn your life around. And I think the music video that we made for it, like, sort of really encapsulates the message of the story of the song really well in its story.
Yes, definitely. It is a very strong connection to the lyrical message as well. Did you guys write the story for the music video?
Yeah, so we collaborated with the filmmaker Rob Z. Let's call him Rob Z. Sorry, Rob, I don't know your last name, only that it starts with a Z. So we kind of wrote it together with him and, like, kind of figured out the blocking of it. But yeah, we were very keen from the beginning to kind of have this idea of like the mental health aspect, and the aspect that we want to show somebody who's in sort of a depressed or a dark state, you know, sort of taking positive steps to come out of it.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And one of those things that in the video was connecting with the people around you and being open and honest with them.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, that's the first step. Is, like, I feel like a lot of times when you're feeling down, you know, that's the first, you don't feel like doing anything. But once, you know, you're out with your friends or out at a concert, or, you know, even just taking a walk, you're like, you know what, I feel better now that I'm here.
Mm-hmm. And one of the most powerful things I feel about the video is you guys actually do touch on the fact that maybe the person wants to reach out, but maybe they're having difficulties sending that message. So it's actually one of the other members of the band who ends up running into them and ends up saying, hey, we really want to see you, type thing, you know?
Yeah. And that's, of course, another thing. You know, if you've got that friend that you haven't seen for a long time that seems to have just fallen off the radar, maybe it's time to make that effort to reach out and connect, to just make sure everything's good and they're on the right track.
Mm-hmm. And you guys actually even went one step further in pushing this message with the Canadian Mental Health Association, with the Get Loud campaign, by delving into your own stories a little bit on social media, giving little videos and everything else, which was also really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it was just something we all felt we had to do, and it was something everybody had to do individually, because we all have such different stories when it comes to, you know, mental health and mental illness. And, you know, a big part of it is self-care and things like that. So, yeah, it was really important, besides just the music video, to really have that personal piece from each of us, so that to connect with people out there.
Oh, and it definitely does give the listeners of the band that true connection to feel that the real energy that you guys are trying to get through with that message?
Yeah.
All right. So what is coming up next for Sleep Circle? You guys just released an album. You're a few singles in. What is next on the cycle?
Well, I mean, we've got some exciting opportunities for shows coming up in Vancouver here and also out of town. And we're trying to get into the studio as soon as possible to actually record a follow-up single for the album.
Oh, wow.
We've probably got about 8 songs that are in different levels of completion already, so the train just keeps on a-rolling.
Mm-hmm. Any tours planned for the near future?
We're hoping to go down to the States, like to do kind of a Washington, Oregon, maybe California if we're able to be really ambitious with it.
Mm-hmm.
But all that sort of stuff is kind of in the planning stages at the moment.
Okay, still very much in a nursing stage.
Yeah, but then we're going to be playing locally in Vancouver next month, and then should be able to announce some shows like out in Kelowna, Kamloops, Victoria, and Nanaimo in the next month or so.
Oh, well, fantastic. I'm actually in Kamloops myself, so I will do my best to make sure that I can get out to see you.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I definitely agree. All right, so where can the listeners of the Desert Tiger podcast go to find out more about Sleep Circle?
So you can check out our website, which is www.sleepcircleband.com. That has a lot of information on there about the band, upcoming shows, and also our merch store. And then if you want to check out our music, we're on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, all the usual places. Is SoundCloud still a thing?
I'm pretty sure it is still a thing.
Okay. So we're probably on there then, too. I'm a Spotify guy myself, so I'm like, it's on Spotify, I'm good, that's all I need.
Fair enough. I understand that struggle myself.
And then you can also see us on YouTube if you want to check out the music video, and then we have lyric videos for all the singles.
Yeah, I definitely suggest that they go and check out the video for Bring It On as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, no worries. I appreciate you. All right, you guys. And sadly, with that brings us to the end of another episode of the Desert Tiger podcast. So with that, I want to go ahead and thank my special guest here on today's episode, Paul Wilson of Sleep Circle, for joining me and speaking about the band's latest album and how they transitioned between sounds from their debut EP into their latest full-length, and a little bit of behind-the-scenes noise. From what I hear, that sound continues to evolve on those future tracks that they're working on that we spoke about. How so? I guess you're going to have to go ahead and follow Sleep Circle on Spotify, YouTube, any of those places, just to keep up to date for yourself. I'm also going to want to go ahead and thank Eric Alper for helping set this interview up. You guys know that EA has helped us out a whole bunch in the past with the DTP, has hooked us up with a lot of amazing, interesting guests, and I always love working with Eric Alper. So once again, a big thank you to EA for setting this one up. And last but not least, it is you, the listeners, those of you who have tuned into this episode of the podcast. That's right, I'm talking to you specifically. I'm actually making a little heart sign towards you too. That's how thankful I am for you for tuning into this episode of the DTP. If you are a new listener of the show, why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe or follow button on whatever service you are listening on. that would make me extremely happy. But you know what would make me ecstatic? You know what would send me over the wall? It would be if you chose to review the show on either iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or Stitcher. Of course, on 2 of those platforms, we have a solid 5-star average on iTunes, a little bit lower than that, but the majority of our reviews are 5 stars, and baby, that is all that matters, because once we get more reviews, that allows us to chart. It allows us to get bigger, find new listeners, and in turn, that helps us get bigger and better guests. And of course, if you liked what you heard today, you can go ahead and share this episode as well, either on your social media or through word of mouth with your friends, if, of course, that is something that you still do. Alright, so as you guys know, I'm actually recording this episode 1 week before it releases. So as to who is going to be on the Desert Tiger podcast for the 22nd of August, the episode releasing after this one, I actually haven't made that decision yet. I am bringing my recording equipment out to Regina, Saskatchewan, where I am right now visiting my newly born nephew. When this episode releases, I'm hopefully going to be getting some interviews. Well, I know I'm getting some interviews in Saskatchewan. Hopefully I get a bit more than what's already lined up. And once I have those in the cans, I'm sure from there I will make the decision about who is going to be on the podcast. But until then, I'm sure that you guys are going to continue to shine brightly like the beautiful diamonds that you are, and continue to spread your wings and fly far, because that's what we do. That's what we do when we rumble through the jungle, baby. Alright, have yourselves a wonderful week of August the 15th, and until next time, bye-bye.